Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekly show, Planets and Predictions. I am your host, Dallisa Hocking. I am a fifth-generation psychic medium, and I love astrology. And I love doing this weekly show because we're going to dive into the energies, the current transits, what's happening in the sky, how it's affecting our life now. I'll also be pulling up news headlines a little bit later in today's show. And we're going to be talking about how the astrology is lining up with those news headlines. So it's a bit of the magic of astrology, but also how is it showing up in our day-to-day life. Welcome in, everybody. Good to see everyone here. If you're wondering what the heck is happening on the screen with this jar, that is a special giveaway that I do every Tuesday during these episodes. So if you're watching live and you drop a comment, your little bauble, just like that, goes into the jar. And at the end of today's show, I will be pulling a winner, and that winner will receive a personalized 12-month tarot report from me. So yay! Thank you so much for tuning in live. So now that you've got the lay of the land, let me go ahead and introduce you to today's guest. I'm going to be bringing him up on the screen here in a moment. Ari and I first met a few years ago. I was doing an online summit, and he was one of the astrologers. He has quite a following on YouTube, so make sure you go follow him over there as well. But he does a lot of amazing content around astrology. And yeah, so welcome in. Let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I would love to see that. And I'll be monitoring the chat as we go through this today. Okay. So with clarity and compassion, Ari teaches and practices astrology as a spiritual tool in service to our soul evolution. His teaching is rooted in the lineage of evolutionary astrology as taught by Jeffrey Wolfe Green, and continues to blossom with his own ongoing realization. I love that. Ari wrote his own intro book to evolutionary astrology and teaches a yearly training program that's actually getting ready to start. So I'll have to make sure to ask him about that. And you can check out Ari's work and everything he's got going on over at arimoshe.com. So let's go ahead and bring Ari up on the screen, and we'll have a delightful conversation about astrology. Ari, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dallisa. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I know it's been a while since you and I have gone live and talked about astrology, so I've been looking forward to this. So I want to start off by getting your take on what is happening in astrology now. I know it's a power-packed week. We have a partial solar eclipse that's happening. We've got Neptune doing some stuff. But I want to hear from you, because maybe some of our audience members today have never heard of evolutionary astrology, so they may not be familiar with your take on it. So can you start us off with the pulse of what's happening in astrology now?
Yeah, okay. So, hi, everyone. This is my effort to do my best to bring it together. There is a lot going on. I think we're in one of those moments that is really unique. Not just this year, but really this time period. So let's categorize the transits in two basic groups. We have this long-term Saturn-Neptune cycle that's renewing itself. You can say Saturn and Neptune form a conjunction every 40, 45 years or so, but they're actually joining each other at the very, very beginning of Aries. So right now we're in this journey where the Saturn-Neptune's culminating at the very end of Pisces along with the North Node. That's an incredibly active theme, and we definitely need to unpack that. It's all start there, but I'll just identify the other dimension. Right now, we're also moving to the third of three oppositions between Pluto and Mars. And I think this has kind of been a little bit overlooked in a lot of the astrological teachings, because there's so much happening during these eclipses and Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde, this Pisces, North Node, Saturn, Neptune. That's all very charged. But this Mercury, Pluto is really the evolutionary ground and a very catalyzing and powerful force. So I think in context, these are all very powerful events, and they're actually all happening at the very early degrees of Aries, early degrees of Leo, early degrees of Aquarius. So this speaks to a very strong new cycle that's just beginning to emerge. So let's say over the next 3 or 4 months, these energetics are coming into very strong alignment. And then more long-term, it's like the next year, year and a half, profound and fundamental evolutionary changes on this planet. Let's understand the ground of Saturn and Neptune. So wherever we have Saturn transiting at any moment in time, personally, collectively, speaks to where we're setting up shop. It's like the ground and the structures within which we are operating on this human journey. An important teaching that comes with Saturn is to learn how to act and live in alignment, right? So we can orient towards materialism or success or doing whatever we think we need to do to achieve the result. So cheating on the test, putting on the suit and being ingenuine around our own ethics, but just whatever we need to do to pay the bills. And these are journeys that we all kind of struggle with, right? How to live in the world and deal with the complexity of spiritual adulting. Sometimes we have to face a hard reality of there are many things in this world that are just very dense and very material, but you have to feed your family, you have to pay the taxes, all of those kinds of things. The Saturn journey at the core is this internal relationship, one that only we can cultivate for ourselves, of cultivating our own self-authority and our own maturation. How are we going to engage in this world in order to accomplish what we're here to accomplish? How do we work with the structures of society and time and space in the useful and relevant ways without becoming overly conditioned by it? And that's the key. So anytime Saturn's really emphasized, there's a sort of heaviness to it because it says life is as it is right now. How are you going to adopt and work with it in order to support your ongoing growth? And just to make this really clear at this point, if we don't do the Saturn work, things like not showing up on time or not taking the effort to create limits or restrictions, let's say before studying for a test, you want to make sure you eat well or get good night's sleep the night before. Limitations and discipline that are simply necessary for functioning in this world. So it's a very root chakra dimension where we learn how to regulate ourselves in order to grow and accomplish anything of meaning in this life. Saturn in Pisces closing a cycle with Neptune makes it quite existential. Neptune in particular, Neptune in Pisces, speaks to ultimate meaning. Neptune is always pointing to what is true with a capital T. So let's give a moment to learn about Neptune and then bring it together with Saturn in Pisces. Truth, from the point of view of Neptune, corresponds to absolute reality, who we are, what is fundamentally true. And let's just say truth exists. Now, I'm not giving you a philosophy of truth. I'm not telling you what that truth is. I'm just saying it is. Like reality is, whatever the hell this is, it is. You can't really grasp it or possess it or say, oh, I got it, because it's like water. The second you think you have it, it slips through your fingers. So Neptune is reality with a capital R. And it's what's real, it's what's true. Relative to what's true, we have all of our illusions and projections and our attempts to make meaning. We can say within Neptune, we have the idea of ultimate meaning, that which is fundamentally and always true. And that is the only thing that provides true security. We can give meaning to a lot of things, but they're just illusions, they're just concepts. And I like to use the analogy of a sandcastle, right? We can build a sandcastle and say, oh, this sandcastle is this perfect love relationship or this ideology or this political movement or this concept of life that I figured out that I'm going to live by. I'll die for it. But then the waters of truth, meaning reality, whatever that is, however it expresses, comes, and through whatever means, that sandcastle is washed away. So where we place ultimate meaning, and where we place ultimate meaning is essentially what we trust. Like we'll free fall into what we really believe in. Not belief as like a belief system, like I believe this over that, but belief on an emotional investment. We give it our full trust. This is where meaning actually is. And so we project all of that. And this is where the Neptunian journey is, this personal spiritual process of disillusionment relative to where we've given meaning to that which has no meaning, and the realignment, ultimately seeking a relationship to the truth that we didn't create, meaning we didn't invent the truth. So from a spiritual perspective, and now I'm sharing my own cosmological lens or frame of thinking of this, it's like hard to ever speak of Neptune without introducing a cosmological lens. So that's like the relationship between the Sagittarius and the Pisces archetype. Because Sagittarius is kind of what I'm doing right now, providing a philosophical framework to understand reality. And that's Sag. The square to Pisces is, and then there's a reality. And you're going to have 1,000 different cosmological frameworks through which we can understand sort of the ununderstandable. You're never going to be able to fully possess it in its entirety. So through this lens, you can say each aspect of reality is inseparable from the oneness. It's inseparable from the wholeness. And the way I think of it is each one of us has a role to play. We each have a purpose. There's a way in which the truth, if we allow it, wants to act and move through each one of us according to its will and its purpose. And its will is really one with our will in the deepest essence of our being. But there's often a letting go and a releasing of where we've told ourselves that we are something that we are not. So Neptunian journeys, and when Neptune's emphasized, there's often a very important, often difficult realignment, because when we've given something a lot of meaning, it can feel very difficult to let go. Usually when our illusions are dissolved, either we'll go through a necessary period of confusion and disarray and almost meaninglessness or hopelessness so that we can ultimately potentially reorient towards, okay, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to be wrong about what I believed is true. If we don't get jaded or become sort of distrustful of life itself. See, when we're disappointed, it's not because life betrayed us. It's because we established the conditions upon which we believed life should show up for us. So we've confused our own self. So that happens. Or, and this is very, very common, instead of being disillusioned, to protect our innocence, to protect ourselves from facing the potential confusion of having been wrong, we will double down on our illusions. So we'll further affirm the delusions that we believed in spite of the evidence to the contrary. This has to be true. And so anything that's implying something else isn't real. And that becomes a very potentially delusional state that can be very scary. So that's Neptune at the core, realignment and surrender to what is true that we did not create, learning to become an instrument, learning to understand ourselves and life in light of what's true. And, words that come with Neptune, forgiveness, surrender, letting go. We're forgiving our own thoughts, our own mistakes, and really a sincere openness to play our part in the greater plan for oneness. Now, when we bring Saturn and Neptune together, we are looking at the interface between structure, form, everything that's conditioned to Saturn. Even you can say from the point of view of the soul having an incarnate experience, it comes into a form, a template, a parameter of the human body. We all manifest within a culture and a society where there are both gender laws and rules and social constructs, but also practical rules and laws for how to function in society. All of that is Saturn. Not all of that is helpful, but all things that are structured and defined correspond to the Saturn dimension of consciousness: definition, form, and structure and conditioning. We're working with that and the unconditioned. Neptune is the unconditioned. It's love. It's the truth. It's the oneness. It's the essence of who we are. It's that which is only true and real. But love, truth, oneness itself is not conditioned or defined by form. It doesn't even know itself as that, because form is not original to existence. So what happened along the soul journey for all of us is we mistakenly take structure as being more important than the truth. So we kind of like take form and structure and conditions and roles and status and all these things, and we deify it. My sense of ultimate meaning is in this role or this social status or in this material gain or in this social approval and acceptance. So we get confused, and where structure at its highest understanding is meant to serve love, meaning the work that we're doing on the Saturn level is not for its own purpose. We're not making money for its own sake. We're not learning how to follow the rules of society for its own sake. We're not going to die and go to heaven and get a sticker for being a good boy or a good girl. We're learning how to operate and function within the Saturn dimension with respect to what is a deeper reason for why we're here in the first place. So the higher interpretation of Saturn is learning how to orient our structural reality, to condition a structural reality in service to meaning. There's this beautiful teaching from A Course in Miracles that explains what time is for. And time is Saturn. Time is a parameter, right? It's like literally in a practical sense, I have a schedule defining divisions, parameters, right? At this time, I'm doing this. At this time, I'm doing this. And I'm managing my life accordingly. But also in terms of long-term experience, we condition our human life experience such that, I'm working on a goal, and in 5 years, I'm going to achieve this thing, and I'm going to graduate and move on to the next. Like everything that's happening here on this human level is with respect to time. So there's this beautiful quote, and I probably won't get it perfectly right, but I'll paraphrase it. The purpose of time is to use time purposefully. When it is no longer useful, it'll cease to exist. And what that means is time itself has a reason. We can say this entire structural reality of human experience, down to our bodies, down to every crevice of this world that we're living in, all of it's purposeful if we think of it as a school of spiritual learning. So we can say from a Saturn-Neptune understanding, this is really about how are we going to embrace the spiritual curriculum of this human life to learn the love that we are. And this is about clarifying and correcting where we may have used structure as being more important than the purposes of that structure. We've given it higher meaning. And so there's a reversal, learning to orient towards what's meaningful and to structure our lives around that. So I'll offer 2 reflections to flesh this out more specifically. So like I said, these 2 planets are coming together right now. They're moving into Aries. They actually don't conjunct until 2026. So they get really close, which means archetypally, it's like the closing of this cycle. It's like this like stressful, tense, like, it's not quite there yet. There's a culmination happening, and it's an extended culmination. And it moves into Aries. They both move back into Pisces, and then next year they move back into Aries. Again, this is a year-long journey, and then there's a separation that happens afterwards to further play it out. We have to appreciate on a collective and personal level the culmination of the Saturn-Neptune cycle, and I'll speak about it generically, and then I'll speak specifically to what it means to have this manifesting on the Pisces-Aries cusp. The culmination of this cycle points to, 1, the dissolving of where we've given a lot of investment and meaning. So we could have the example of you work every day, you wake up, you go to your job, you fight for your nation, you do the right thing according to your religion or your social group or your political party. You've invested a lot of belief in this particular country or nation. And what's revealed is where none of that was actually real or true. And this can reveal the corruption, Saturn, the deception, where we can idealize forms of authority, leaders, governments, etc., and realize, oh my God, they actually aren't ethical. There's all this deception that I wasn't even aware of. And we can realize in our own personal lives, we've told ourselves, oh, I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing the right thing, I'm doing the right thing. But we're just depressed and we're lacking a sense of joy and meaning. We can live a life doing the right thing and die utterly miserable and kind of leave this world with the karma of repression. Meaning repression doesn't mean, again, you get the sticker. It means you're going to come back and deal with that repression. Everything yet unresolved within us needs to be seen and brought into absolute clarity. So that's one dimension. The other example we can say, where there's a lack of discipline, meaning not bringing forward agency to really give purpose and direction to our life, kind of like we wake up, we roll out of bed, and we just kind of go along with whatever. Pisces is like the immune system. Neptune's like the immune system. So when there's no discernment, the I'm open to whatever means we're going to condition a reality according to whatever happens, whatever we scroll to on our phone, whatever the person next to us wants to do and asks of us. Meaning without discernment, we don't remain free of conditioning. We actually remain very defined by a particularly strong enslaved form of conditioning where we don't make our own choices. And so this speaks to a co-creative quality of learning to discern what is meaningful. Now, what's meaningful for you, for me, for everyone is our own soul program. We can't conform to an idea that isn't authentic for ourselves. So really aligning with our own soul program is connecting with our inspiration, where we know from our own inner experience that love is calling us forward in a particular way. And that requires discipline. So both strengthening our own engagement, there's a really beautiful way of thinking of surrender. Like we surrender, but then we're also engaged, right? Because surrendering without that engagement means we're not orienting our intention towards purpose. And an engagement without surrender means we can easily delude ourselves in all kinds of self-imagined thinking. So I'll close this bit with then just speaking to that transition between Pisces and Aries. I think it can be very common to be experiencing personally and collective the disappointment, the disillusionment of all that we've given meaning to. And there's that last hurrah of, I'm really trying to give it a lot of meaning. I think during this time, we can find a lot of the deception and the illusions revealing itself. And this might be a hard loss, a hard period of revelation for many, many, many souls on the planet in terms of our collective global nationalistic realities and our own personal paths, in terms of realizing the lies that we've been living and the deceptions that we've been living under, self-created. But it's preparing us for a new path of leadership. There's something new that wants to emerge from all of this that says you have a path, trust it, claim it, but that might require a deeper level of trust and confidence in something that we haven't maybe seen or known yet. So I'll stop there and maybe allow for interaction, because I can just go on for a long time.
Oh, no, it's beautiful. What I was picking up as you were speaking, Ari, is a lot of what I've been predicting in a psychic realm of, similar to the Tower card in tarot, it's like the systems burning and resulting in this like pile of ashes. But then what is built from that, or the phoenix rising. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, what I was hearing when you were speaking was that we may have hooked ourselves knowingly or unknowingly into these different things that we placed meaning on. The beautiful car, the great job, having a home that you can entertain in, things that may look or seem successful or beautiful to other people, but may not be completely aligned with a frequency of love, that all of those things are up for renegotiation or will dissolve. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. Absolutely. Yeah. And can I be a little controversial in that?
Sure.
I have no qualm speaking to this. There's massive deception happening all around the world relative to different political leaders and nationalist movements. And some of you may not agree with me, and that's totally fine, because I'm not here to alienate anyone, but I'll speak my truth. Here in the United States, many, many souls are being deceived by Donald Trump outright. And the nature of this deception is one where the nature of his consciousness and what he's trying to achieve is essentially a dictatorship that will limit the rights of many, many people. That reality, and usually I'm not one to be political, but I'm seeing this happen. I've, many, many relatives that died in the Holocaust. And so I become very interested in, what does it take for a political leader to successfully deceive an entire nation to believe and think and even do the unthinkable? And it takes appealing to the weakness and the vulnerability in people to then capture that and redirect salvation. And there's a savior, there's a solution out there by scapegoating or blaming it on these groups of people, these subdivisions of society. It's incredibly easy, once we've given meaning to a political figure or a cause or a nationality, to then be blind to the absence of our own humanity. And I'm seeing this happening in Israel as well. I'm a Jew. I've lived in Israel. I have a great conversation with a friend of mine yesterday, a rabbi, where I'm like, why not just have empathy? Why is it whenever we speak, because you see this amongst different people that are oriented towards different political movements or countries, pro-Israel, support Israel, right? I'm like, okay, support Israel, but why isn't there enough referencing to the actual suffering of Palestinian people right now? And there's a blind spot. And all I'm wanting to point out in this, I'm not wanting to derail and get political. I'm wanting to emphasize there's a blind spot. I'm seeing in this political figure, in this political movement, in this nationality, in this nation, these ideals that I've believed in, and I'm not able to see that it's not pure. I'm not able to see it beyond the projections that I've established, perhaps that I grew up with. Oftentimes when we dissolve these Saturn-Neptune dynamics, we're actually looking at our conditioning. Why is it the case that most Jews who grew up in a particular context, or most Arabs that grew up in a particular context, or most religious people, or most nationalities, they will continue to believe the things that they grew up with as if somehow they were born in the right family and they got it right? So there's a lack of global and universal perspective where we can easily deny our own Neptune, Saturn, our own natural ethical attunement to care and to have empathy for our collective and shared suffering. I think we're seeing a lot of suffering. My friend, Diana, who's also a Palestinian, lives in Ramallah. She's an astrologer. She said Saturn, Neptune, and she did this beautiful video on the history of Saturn, Neptune through the lens of the land of Palestine itself, which is fascinating. Looking at it in the 1700s when it was under Ottoman rule and these different rebellions, she said there have been many experiences with Saturn, Neptune, where you can see these efforts towards nationality, these efforts for these group of people to claim their own sovereignty as a nation. But then it's like Saturn is the visa holder that will or will not give a path to the Neptunian dreams. So there are these experiences over and over again where powers that be, these larger corporations or nations, will have all of the power and will deny visa or citizenship to these dreams of a more ethical and inclusive society. It's a very fascinating study. And so I think this is something for us to be aware of. History simply repeats itself. And it really takes on our own journey the clarity of mind to recognize that pattern. And again, it's like the collective and the personal are one. I really recognize the fractal nature of the world. So where are we called to break out of the, I'm doing the right thing, I'm supporting the causes that I'm supposed to, but really get in touch with what's really alive and true in my soul? How can I care more? How can I care more about this life and open up where there's been repression and suppression?
I'm sure you're giving all of us a lot to think about. One question that comes to mind is, do you think that, or I should maybe rephrase this, of how much you think is fate versus free will? Because my question at the core of it is, we're seeing these different world leaders, whether it's Trump or Putin or Zelensky or, insert the name of the leader. And we also see what's happening astrologically. Can we point to astrology to say that there were these different catalysts that would come in to dissolve these different structures? Or is that our free will and our collective energy?
We're very innocent.
Yeah.
We have these very innocent beliefs that things are going to work out just well. Right, that freedom and justice and equality and rights will prevail in the world, and we always want to project that and look at the transits and say, okay, Saturn, Neptune, okay, the dissolving of the deception, the illusions, and the building of it's not going to be like that. I think the truth is it doesn't happen in the world until it happens in us. We can't just sort of idly hope or wish that something radical is going to change or that there's going to be peace in the world. We should know from history that it just doesn't happen that way. These cycles have repeated themselves over and over and over again. I think we are on an evolutionary arc. There is a growing, right? But as it happens, I think this is a principle that is innate to the healing journey. The sickness has to be revealed. I think many things are going to get worse. I think here in this country, things are going to get worse. And I'm speaking to the United States. And I want to be clear. I'm the reason why I'm vocal about this is because it's real, and it's not an opinion. And so things are going to get worse. There's an actual reality happening right now. People, the law is changing. People are being arrested without due process right now. That's Saturn, Neptune, meaning the rule of law. Saturn, Neptune, throw it out of the window. No rule of law. That's the other dimension. A complete lack of ethical ground. Sometimes this has to grow and open just to bring forward the awareness of what's actually going on. Where in our own individual lives we're used to the status quo living out of alignment living disconnected from our own feeling body, from our own caring, from our own sense of right, is simply where those elements inevitably have to make themselves evident in order to be seen and then to eventually heal. So my own personal sense of the transits, and I'm actually curious to hear your own sense of it. I think over the next few years, this isn't going to necessarily get better. It might get worse before it gets better. Then in our own personal lives, I think we have to do our work to say, well, what am I living for? What's important? To me, this is not about fighting or being right or arguing our points. It's not so much my MO, although I'm getting more and more into this whole like to speak my truth piece, but it's about what am I living for? Where does love and inspiration and meaning and purpose naturally want to express through me? And we have to really be able to claim our stake to that. That feels like the most important thing right now. So regarding your question, fate versus free will, I never know how to address that question because I have the experience personally of free will. And even that kind of confuses me. It eludes me. I believe we all have free will, and I practice this myself, but I only practice it in the moment where I remember that I can, right? Like most of the time, if I'm sort of in a daze of reactive action, I'm not going to practice my free will, which is basically the demonstration of agency to stop and choose my own orientation, to choose my own thoughts. To even know that I can do that means I'm not identified with whatever I'm attached to. So like the extent of our attachments, we might have to play certain things out. But there's this like very intimate, mysterious threshold of free will that we have. But I like to say, in those moments where I'm aware that I can choose differently, I don't know how it is that I knew that I could become aware of that in the first place, right? There's something in me that wants that. And I guess that's who I am. I guess that's my soul. But it's a very mysterious thing. It's like the moment of free will is sort of beyond our sense of identity. It's a deeply powerful place. And that's all I can speak to on our own collective journey. There is a sort of group karma that sometimes we all have to go through. But I don't think that determines our true sense of fulfillment and empowerment.
Beautifully stated. We have Diana here in the comments, pointing back to predictions that I've made that it'll get worse before it gets better. And so, you and I are saying the same thing with that. And, you know, I host this show every week, and I've had folks come on in the comments and say, well, when does it get better? And part of that conversation has been when you decide within yourself that it gets better, and that there is a deep dive, I think, that we're being asked to go on within ourselves and to think about what it is that we've given our power to, or things that we've placed importance on that maybe really doesn't matter to us anymore. Yeah. And so I think we're all kind of being positioned with this reset button in front of us. And we're being asked to really sit and consider what our life has been made up of, and what we're going to place that importance, that meaning, that love on as we move forward. And sometimes I do think that we are presented with catalysts, and we all have catalysts that we've had in our life, and we'll have more, but that those come along our pathway not because we deserve to be punished, but they come along so that we can sit with it and go, wow, you know, an example could be maybe you were let go of from your job, you were fired or laid off, and you're now wondering who the heck you are because maybe you've identified with what you do for a living as part of the description of who you are. And when you're faced with that turning point and you don't have that job anymore, you may be asked to sit with yourself long enough to consider, well, who am I and what do I want now? And so what could be perceived as really bad things in the world maybe could be there in a sense to help reflect back to us what is no longer in alignment for ourselves. Does that resonate?
And I love that you brought in, we're not being punished. You can say what's dissolved along with the Saturn Neptune for many of us, if we are open to it, would be very old and conditioned notions of reward and punishment, right? Like something bad is happening, I must be, that sense of punishment keeps us in a place of guilt and internalize I'm not good, which actually keeps us from learning from our experience, as Dallisa was just expressing. I'm looking at the wrong camera this whole time. No, I'm not. Okay, good. The learning from our experiences is okay. Here I am. Reality. Saturn is our structural reality, as it is the conditions, and then Neptune is like the truth. So our conditions are the way they are, and I'm not going to dream myself into something else unless I fully meet first what is. Otherwise, we're just sort of spiritually bypassing or spraying a nice scent over what's going on. So there's, depression and disappointment, sometimes really slowing down. I'm getting real about, well, I really wanted it to look this way. Your country, your nation, your idealizations, your relationship, your job, your body, I wanted it to look this way. I believed it was supposed to be this way. I really, really thought it was. But it is what it is right now. And so there's like a sobering is a good quality, because we can sort of be drunk in our own ideals and really just believe it to be true. Coming back to the path. What this individual said earlier about, will it get better, right? And you answered, well, when we want it to. I just want to add to that. There's something very tender about really wanting it to get better for ourselves. There's a threshold to which we can want to feel better. We can earnestly want to experience our lives in a different way, to change the frequency and to shift how we've been living. And sometimes the journey is one of really, really first getting to know, getting intimate with how bad things feel, not running away from that. Because I think we're all conditioned for a quick and easy fix. We're conditioned to want to feel good and not wanting to do hard work. And I think the sobering reality is, well, if you want change, you have to work at it. And there's a relationship between our own self-efforts and grace that kind of just comes in. It's not about you have to figure it all out yourself. But if we want happiness, we have to really work on our own thoughts and where we're directing our attention. It's like that wanting joy really means meeting all of the ways in which we're conditioned to create the opposite of it and actually changing. We condition a new pattern of being that becomes more receptive and available to grace. It's hard work though, but I think we can honor and appreciate that if we have the right intention and are willing and ready to do the work, these transits will carry us. These transits will support us, because these transits say just that. These transits say, this is a time of ending and letting go and allowing. If you do your work, love will meet you halfway or more than halfway. Trust the journey.
Sarah is saying, as a first house Saturn person, I agree with this.
Yeah. And for everyone, Saturn is entering Aries, which is a first house energy, right? So this is the whole point. We're going to be activated to really trust in ourselves and our own self-leadership.
I think one of my biggest turning points in liberating myself came when I wasn't afraid to sit down with my feelings, no matter what it was that I was feeling, and looking at it or feeling through it with a lens of curiosity. Why am I so mad about this thing or mad at this person? What is it? Knowing that it's something within me that is, being drudged up and coming out as that feeling, that emotion, and then getting down to that core of it and loving myself. And as you said, Ari, extending grace, finding that grace, forgiveness, and love for myself and extending it out of me as well into the person, or sending it to the person that I was really mad at. But you're right. It's an inside job, and you're the only one that can sit with how you're feeling and unpack it in a way, hopefully, that is with that lens of curiosity and less about the shame, the guilt, the judgment of yourself for feeling it in the first place, because there is so much gold and magic in our emotions. And the more we lean in, I just feel like the more liberated you become.
Yeah. What a blessing and a goal for each one of us to consider. What would it be like to become a shameless learner? To learn from all the teachings that life has to offer, but to make a choice to not let shame get in the way of the process. It's a really wonderful thing to think about.
Absolutely. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about the partial solar eclipse this week.
Great.
Do you lean into the eclipses? Do you find that they're really impactful for our evolution and growth?
I do. And this would be a great segue to speak to that Mars-Pluto dynamic that I mentioned. Eclipses are powerful. I'll say why. Eclipses are when the lunar nodes coincide, where the new moon and the full moon will coincide with the lunar nodes. So at any moment in time, the transiting lunar nodes are sort of like portals through which dynamics of the past are emerging right now to be integrated and resolved. Sometimes fruits that have been planted seeds long ago. So they can be very positive and helpful or beneficial or easy, whatever. It's all positive. It just might be a matter of, oh, this feels good, or, oh, this is a lesson to complete. But it's all coming from the past, right? And it's usually a combination of the two. Whereas a north node at any present moment in time is the ongoing evolutionary direction of this present moment. It's where circumstances are leading us towards our own ongoing evolutionary path via choice making. So the nodal polarity as a whole kind of reframes our understanding of time in this moment. Like, we're not living on this linear scale where this moment is the result of 5 minutes ago. It's more so that what's emerging through the portal of the nodes are these karmic dynamics archetypally from lifetimes ago, seeds, dynamics of the past that are emerging right now, and how we're integrating them to move forward and continue on into new experiences, new thresholds of evolutionary growth that we've never encountered before. So the nodes are always important. To see where the transiting nodes are happening in our own individual charts is very insightful for understanding the theme of sort of the evolutionary journey right now at any moment in time. When the lunar nodes coincide with full moons and new moons, that's placing a very significant personal and collective emphasis on the evolutionary theme of the lunar nodes. I mean, it's so powerful. You can see it in the sky. So it's almost like this portal opens up wide, and a lot of energy can move through and out. So I like to say your own evolutionary journey in general is accelerated. Dynamics that need to be brought forward to be resolved, it happens that way. Many things are brought to completion. Karmic dynamics of the past can be brought to completion, and doors can open for your ongoing journey. This north node, this solar eclipse, it's a new moon happening in Aries. And then we have close to that Mercury and Venus also retrograde. And it's basically 10 degrees from the north node in Pisces. So this upcoming solar eclipse strongly emphasizes the north node and that Saturn-Neptune conjunction that we've been speaking about. But on the Aries side also. So I would characterize this particular eclipse in two ways. One, there's a sense of trust your own leadership. You have a path and you have a purpose, and let go of any kind of devil of criticism and perfectionism and fear that might keep you from taking the concrete, decisive steps that you need to take. And if we're triggered or catalyzed, right, we might be instigated emotionally in a very, very strong way at this time and may not know what to do about it. And that's a very Aries Mars type of thing. So the ruler of this eclipse is Mars. Mars is currently in Cancer, picking up speed, moving to oppose Pluto in Aquarius for the third and final time. So it really emphasizes the importance of this Mars transit, which over the next month is going to be growing in intense strength and significance. Basically through May, we have the strengthening of this Mars-Pluto opposition. So this Mars-Pluto opposition, in a way, is highlighted during this eclipse because actually Mars ruling this eclipse is is also just around the time where Mars is entering into a 10-degree orb, just about, to this Pluto opposition. So it's all really active. Here's what I would say about this. You were speaking about sitting with our triggers and our strong reactions, or why do I feel that about this person, and not just acting. And yet Mars really corresponds to where we're going to have a strong visceral response to things. Strong craving, strong aversion, strong lust, strong yes, strong no, whatever it's going to be. We can be defensive, fight, flight, or fawn. The evolutionary journey with this eclipse and with this growing Mars energy, I think it's really being initiated by this eclipse, and it's going to grow and develop over the next month or two. Is really about, okay, I'm having these visceral reactions. How do I work with this energy in a way that serves my own evolution? With Mars, we have to do something because it's raw energy. We can't just sit idly by and just be like, oh, I feel really pissed off at this person. No, okay, whatever. We have to be able to process it in some way. And what we're most attached to, what we're most invested in, is going to determine the path and the actions that we believe we need to take. So I often speak with the Mars-Pluto relationship that our desires, meaning what we're most invested in, the outcomes, the experiences that we're most attached to, like I want this person to respect me. I'm attached to that, which is like deeper. Like I need to be I need this from that person. I need life to treat me this way. And then this person says something undermining or mean or unthoughtful. Then relative to how that brings up our deepest weakness, I wasn't treated the way I want to, Mars comes in and then says, well, what should I do about it? Do I confront them? Do I insult them too? Or do I just brood and keep it to myself, right? Like we're going to do or not do something with Mars, but it's like that energy is going to go wherever we direct it. So if we do nothing, it's going to stay inside. We'll become an angry, resentful person, right? If we act on it, we're going to create violence. So this is a calling to step into greater strength. Where are we being triggered? Where are we being like, where's the blood boiling? Or conversely, this is an important piece for many of us. Where are we perhaps stagnant or depressed because we don't know that we have the ability to make new choices? We have to meet the content of our lives and where we feel either very charged or out of connection to our power. This is a very unambiguous calling for all of us to connect with that Mars energy. How do I want to respond? What choices do I want to make? We're transmuting that raw Mars energy onto a higher level of consciousness. We can't fake it. So we're all going to act and do what we think we deserve to do, right? If we really believe we're being attacked, we're going to justify violence. You know, if we believe, oh, I don't want to be a bad person, so I'll just keep quiet, then we're going to justify hurting ourselves and keeping all the energy in. So there's a lot of self-reflection. What does it really mean to step into my power and my strength? But what am I living for? I think that Mars-Pluto polarity in many ways, especially with that Aquarius and soon to be Aquarius-Leo axis, speaks to how easy it is to think of other people as the threat to our security. You or your kinds of people or your group of people relative to me and my tribe, my security, Cancer, my sense of safety, or my entitlement and my freedom to exist, Leo. You're impeding on my right, or your people are impeding on my right. I'm entitled and you're not entitled. And sadly, every time we act out of self-righteousness or defense to protect our freedom and rights, it says whatever violence we're creating is justified. And this is something we all need to think about on our own journey. Even if we're right about something, if we're going to use that rightness to almost wield our sword and hurt other people, we're just living in a state of defense. So there's a beautiful teaching in A Course in Miracles. In my safety lies in my defenselessness. In my defenselessness, my safety lies. But that elicits the question, well, if I don't defend, am I just going to be walked on? Right? So we have to understand that it's not about doing nothing and being defenseless. It's about, and this is something, again, we're all going to work with this at the level that we can. Because, you know, if we're in this momentum of aggression or anger or whatever, we sometimes have to play it out. Like that's a part of how are we going to stop ourselves unless we really, really want to. That's the point. But if we reflect on it, okay, I've acted this way or not acted this way thousands of times. Fight, flight, fawn. And this is where it's gotten me. Is there another way? My friend recently said something to me yesterday, and it really bothered me. And I noticed I wanted to say something about it. And we talked briefly, but I didn't feel heard, right? So I thought, okay, I can bring this up later when there's more of a space but I just like, what if I just let myself feel what I'm feeling and experiment with checking back in with myself? And I completely forgot about it. I remembered it now while we've been talking together. And I'm like, oh my God, this is totally not in me. Meaning I can see where that person was coming from. And it's like, I don't need to make them see me. Wow, what liberation. What liberation. I don't need them to understand me. Whew, thank God. To be free of a need to control how another person feels and thinks or behaves. And that just allows us to forgive, but to know who we are, right? To stand in our strength and our clarity. It's not being a doormat. And it means I have more energy for more important things because I want to do so much more with my life than pick these small battles. So that's what I think is emerging with this eclipse and really kickstarting, you can say for the next lunar cycle, but even a little more than that, a very powerful month of radical changes and empowerment.
I release the need for people to see me. I release the need for people to perceive me in the way I want them to. I release the need for people to hear me in the way that I want them to hear me. It's like releasing that need for control. And like you said, Ari, that once we liberate ourselves from a certain expectation we have of other people or how we are perceived, then we have more energy to spend on things that we find align with where we find meaning and purpose. And
we can
live
in, we can live like in these loops. Personally, we see this amongst nations. We see this in our own personal relationships. We live in these loops of you said, you did, I did. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. And within these loops, we strategize all kinds of ways to, well, I'll try being peaceful or I'll try being aggressive, but we're still in the loop of conflict. This eclipse with this strong Mars energy is asking us to evolve into a deeper sense of purpose and leadership. So we just get out of the loop and we redirect our energy elsewhere.
This is one of those episodes that I feel folks may want to watch again or listen to again or share with friends or family that may be in that loop, because I think we all know people that are pointing the fingers or are, creating aggressive action and without judgment. But I think there's going to be a lot of people that need to hear this today. Should we take a look at some of these headlines to see? Okay, we're going to pop these up on the screen and we'll just go through them pretty quickly, but just would love your take on where you're seeing these show up astrologically. So this first one here is an article out of Texas. The headline is, after losing millions in federal cuts, North Texas food banks must now rely on donors. So this is like a change in funding. And I know in my town, I have seen the line for the food bank, the pantry, so long. And I know that there's going to be more and more people psychically. Recently. Yeah.
Where do you live?
In Western Washington State. So the Tacoma. Yeah. So I've been seeing it in my own town, but also predicting, more issues with food and availability of food at lower free, costs. So is there anything astrologically that you're seeing that may point to an issue with food supply or even food banks getting funding?
Yeah. So this comes back, and there are short-term series like the asteroid series that's interesting, but that feels like a slightly different whole topic. It's grounded at the core of the Saturn Neptune. We're looking at government, Saturn, right? So government agencies that provide for the welfare of the masses is Saturn in Pisces. A social welfare program is the essence of Saturn in Pisces. The idea of a structural government, right? That's providing for all people. So it's like indiscriminate of who you are. There are certain services. It's like when it snows on everyone. That's Pisces. So services that are indiscriminate, that are available to anyone that needs it, how like water will flow and trickle down to the lowest spots. What's happening right now is, again, the dissolving of these social services, which is a part of this Neptune-Saturn dynamic, right? So Saturn's telling to compassion, the visa master, right? Nope, compassion, you don't have an entry here. And it's creating a situation where now food banks have to rely on donors, right? So because there isn't structural support from the government itself. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. This is not a prediction, but I wouldn't be surprised if the United States actually ends up moving more towards a poor, impoverished, third world status kind of country over the next few years.
Wow. Wow.
And this is not, I want to say, I don't know, but I think it's important for me to say that because we assume it's all just going to be the same, right? Everything remains the same. Oh, those people, they're having a hard time. Oh, that hit a little bit closer to me. Oh, I know that person. It gets closer and closer and closer until we realize something real is going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I did a live stream with Celeste Brooks on Instagram before this, and I was talking to her about one of my recent visions. And I said, it feels like we're going back to the 1800s, with gardening and bartering. And so it doesn't really surprise me hearing you talk about, the US becoming a third world country. I just hadn't heard it put that way before. But yeah, I've had visions that have backed that up as well. So let's see what headline we have next. Man charged with assault at Tesla dealership after driving car at protesters. So we've been seeing a lot of news headlines pop up with protests, but also the Tesla vehicles being lit on fire, or Tesla dealerships being lit on fire. So that, and like the sign says there on the picture of that article, it says rage. So I've been predicting a lot of uptick with protests, rioting, looting, things like that. So do you see this connected to anything in the astrology with that? Maybe it's the Mars aspect that you were talking about a minute ago, but like that increase of just rage coming out of people.
Yeah, it's definitely it's that Mars Pluto. So becoming an oligarch state where a few people with billions of dollars are kind of at the core influence of the government. And so, of course, Trump is like trying to promote a business, Tesla, because Elon Musk is like his secondhand guy right now. And all that Musk has been doing, which has been hurting the country and millions of people. So there's a lot of anger, right? What this creates is a lot more polarization and division. We're going to have people that are going to feel very charged and very catalyzed, but very disempowered, right? I'm not being cared for. I'm not safe. I'm being disregarded. And so that Mars is like, I'm looking at the polarity, this Aquarius energy. You don't care about me. And there's, again, it also comes back to that disillusionment. Well, I thought I was voting for someone that cared. Okay, you don't care about me. So what am I going to do with this anger, with this hurt, with this sense of being disempowered? We will then always choose to act and do what we think we can to move that energy somewhere. And that action, unfortunately, isn't always the wisest or healthiest or most productive thing to do. So this guy's charged with assault at Tesla dealership. Yeah, that's horrible. So then we have people on the other side. Of course, we're going to have more polarization. The polarization between, people that are in their minds fighting for their rights or freedom, and then others that are in their minds fighting against these people that are, whoever they're deeming them to be. It's always self-justified. What I think is really interesting, where this headline leads me, again, coming back to the deception of that Saturn Neptune, the fact that Trump has spoken about damaging Teslas as an act of national terrorism and is very vocal about putting down people that have been damaging Tesla vehicles, wanting to induce fear of make sure you don't do anything to damage a Tesla vehicle, while he's taken out of jail people that outright have been put in jail for assaulting officers during the attempted insurrection on January 6th. Again, just be aware of the deception. It's a completely reverse reality where what is right and ethical has now been justified as, not important, not right. And then all these other things that support the Aquarius. See, Aquarius Pluto can, on the deepest shadow level, speak to special interest groups with all of the power that are controlling the threads. They're controlling the tides. So every single dictator historically usually has a very close group of oligarchs, people with a lot of power and wealth that are on their team to work with them. That's how it works. I watched this really great video. I'll just say this, and I'll watch this really great video on, what makes a dictator a dictator? What makes a fascist a fascist? And there are certain universal themes, and Trump is displaying all of them right now. So things like this are interesting to follow, but more so the larger ecosystem just around the activism that's happening right now and how the government's responding to that.
Interesting. Oh, there's so much going on. I know we could sit here and talk all day about these headlines, and unfortunately there's a new headline that pops up, every few minutes these days. This one is Paris residents vote in favor of making 500 more streets pedestrian. So I was curious about this because I've been predicting the importance of our own neighbors, our own town, where we live, and that's going to be in a place of more prominence of who's around us. So when I saw this headline, I thought about changes to our local neighborhood and Uranus getting closer, towards the end of Taurus, then it's going to hit Gemini. Do you think that there'll be changes with our neighborhoods or how we live when Uranus gets into Gemini in July?
I love this. This is fascinating. First, the comments here are great. And one person said, what happens is the middle class dissolves. It's exactly what's happening here. And that's always what happens in every paradigm shift like this, like a dictatorship. I love this one because, and you mentioned it earlier, like more people focusing on farms, growing your own food, local community. That's the other end of it. Right? Like while these larger social systems and structures are not working very well, there needs to be a shift in how we are individually and communally beginning to live. So it's kind of going back to the basics in some ways, but the basics need to be how we move forward. We have to stop progressing to the detriment of the basics. So that reminds me of that. I love the idea of seeing more things. That brings me a lot of joy. Creating more pedestrian or bike-friendly areas where it's like cars can't go, because we've distanced ourselves from community, from the body, from each other. We're very device or tool or like instrument oriented right now, and it's like there's a sort of trauma and dissociation in that. So to me, that speaks to another growing thread, which is in the context of all of these changes, we're finding more and more people that on social and economic and local levels are changing how we live.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think in these next couple of years, we're going to see a lot of changes happening in our own country, wherever it is that we live. The world is ever changing and fast and furious. Let's see our next headline. So this one is future Apple Watch models may include cameras as part of the AI push. So a lot of folks have Apple Watches. We anticipate a rise in technology and AI. So do you feel like we're going to have robots like in everyone's homes in the coming years? What do you see with that?
Yeah. I'll quote Moody, a comedian. I heard him speak and said something to the likes of, when I'm angry at my friend, I just take his phone and I just say, herpes, herpes, herpes. And then suddenly he gets these advertisements all over his phone whenever he's on social media for herpes cream. Like, we know that these devices are gathering in overt and covert ways so much information about us. I mean, the technical social media world, while from one lens it's improving our life and opening the accessibility of communication and what we're doing now, there's also a threat of deep corruption and manipulation at the core of it. And so I see something like this, I'm like, okay, great, we're gonna love that because we have another cool device that can do more cool things. You know, take a selfie with your, it's like we can do more. And yet these things also coincide with more and more of our own information and privacy being tracked by the corporations that want to use it. And when these corporations and the billionaires that own them are directly involved in local politics, we have an issue. So these are things I think we should just be mindful of. I always questioned, how much do we need? You know, I just downgraded my phone. At some point, all of the phone companies began making the phones bigger and bigger and bigger. And my hand hurts. I just bought an older version of an iPhone when they were still making them smaller, because it's just not sustainable. We are just sort of stuck in the ocean, in the current of the technological evolution. We need to be able to discern a little bit what we need and how we're going to use what we've determined we need. If we don't, we're just sort of becoming sort of unconscious and allowing ourselves to be a part of a system, which is fine. But if we allow that unconsciousness, we also have to understand we're getting involved in something greater than we understand at the same time. So bringing some agency and intentionality and purpose into our devices, not just like, and also the health benefits, and not to speak to all of the environmental effects of what it takes to mine the minerals for these devices that we just love to use. Something to really think about as we continue to consume the next cool thing.
I think we should bring back the art of letter writing and actually mailing letters. Now, I don't know how feasible that is, since the post office may be privatized, and that's a whole other thing. That's
my issue is my handwriting has degraded in the past 20 years. I can't agree with that. I've lost the art of writing well because I haven't been utilizing it.
Fair. I was thinking maybe I put that as one of our articles, but about the post office, that's a whole other can of worms.
My God. Yeah. I'm taking electrolytes to whoever asked in the comments.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I love electrolytes. I drink them regularly. Yeah. Especially doing this kind of work. Okay, so this article, Canada's Prime Minister and his opponent kick off election saying Trump must respect sovereignty. So the battle between the US and Canada. So I know that some astrologers have pointed to Neptune going into Aries and Uranus going into Gemini as potential war indicators. This makes me sad, when we have to pull up an article like this, because I've seen it just in the Instagram live that we did with Celeste a bit ago, people commenting about how Canadians saying, I'm not going to the US. I'm boycotting stepping foot in the United States. And Canada was such a friend to the United States for so long. So that polarization is also being seen between the United States and countries that, we once were allies with. So is there anything in the astrology pointing to friends becoming foes, or anything with war battles or the lines drawn in the sand?
I mean, I think all the things that we've spoken to.
I know everything, right?
Relative to Uranus entering Gemini, which is going to be moving back and forth until I think later next year. That is a powerful evolutionary shift. We'll have almost like a full-on sextile all around the zodiac, with Jupiter in Leo, Uranus in Gemini, Neptune in Aries, Pluto in Aquarius. All of these powerful planets at early degrees of these fire and air signs. So of course, on the one hand, like the positive quality of that ultimately, or maybe the more enjoyable quality of that, is more accessibility of more information, more ideas, more free-flowing content. The issue with that, relative to Uranus in particular, is remember that Uranus always corresponds to groups of people at all levels of consciousness. And so while the core of Uranus is about liberation, So we liberate with Uranus. We free our minds from the precedent of the known, and we open up to a more non-conditioned reality beyond that. We're always going to have souls that want to remain in the known, and thus will suppress the free flow of information, or will distort information to fit the boxes of whatever world they're wanting to paint. This is really true right now with Jupiter in Gemini squaring Pisces, meaning there are a lot of people that are, genuinely confused about what to believe, because you have a lot of contradictory information all over the place. And it can be very, again, disillusioning relative to having built a mental framework around what we think is true. And then it can be very easy to start to believe, and I'm seeing this happen, oh, there's an issue with Canada. It's their fault. That's what Trump would want to do. That's the idea, is to actually create a reverse reality where we can create, Gemini, a logical frame in our mind to then conceive of why it's their fault. They're the problem. And thus we have that group thinking, me versus you instead of us. So that's what that reminds me of, right? Sort of the innocent and the sort of good human nature of us, which we can say maybe is like, I don't know much about Canada, but in our relationship with them, maybe that's been the relationship for a long time. Like we just care about each other. We like each other, right? There's good relations. It's mutually trusting and inclusive and supportive. Is this good for you? Is this good for you? Good trades, whatever. I'm assuming that's generally how it's been. But now it's like, okay, one person wants you, I want you to orient to my reality. That's bullying. It's like Uranus is like, you have a group of people, and in an ideal world, there's a shared consciousness that we all care about each other. I'm not free if you're not free. Then we could have one bully in that group of people that changes the dynamic. Oh, you have to be like this or act this way, or no, you're not a part of the group. You're not a part of the clique if you act that way. And it creates a lot of sectarian thinking. And then it becomes a matter of, do I belong? Do I not belong? Can I share my views? And you have like that one relative that's like, oh, Canada, they got some big issues. I can't believe they're not supporting the tariffs. Oh, that's my relative saying that. Do I share my thoughts? Or what if my relative will not like me? What if I'm going to be outed? What if I'm going to be canceled by people that I love and care about? That's the kind of things that I think we'll see more of, which means we have to not be so attached to being right. We have to not be so attached to trying to convince and persuade other people of our own logic. There's a detachment with Uranus. Let it all come, let it all go. There's an evolutionary process that's happening right now. If we get too invested in the drama, we kind of miss a larger unfolding. So that's like always a good Uranian perspective. Stay as a witness, because there are evolutionary threads in humanity that, like we've been saying, are a lot more about community and sharing and inclusion and giving and acceptance and working together. And that these things are kind of, again, bringing up exactly where not that is healing. These divisive qualities, these bullying qualities, these me versus you, that has to come up. So just don't worry too much about it. I think it's so important to cultivate an orientation of friendliness and inclusivity towards as many people as we can possibly find in our heart. We demonstrate that no matter what, no matter who it is, no matter how they're acting towards us, because that ingrains in our mind and in other people's minds a kind of world that we're actually moving towards, even if right now things seem a little bit difficult. That quality of friendliness and inclusivity is so important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Joan put a funny comment here. My secondhand smart TV died, went back to my dumb TV.
Nice.
Yeah. Sometimes it's kind of, we have another comment in here about, I love my low tech home. Exactly. And then Sarah said, well, soon enough, we won't have a postal service. So there's that about our letter writing campaign. So yes, mass changes. So any closing thoughts that you have, Ari, before we let you go? And I also want you to talk about where people can find you and the class that you have starting, if it's not too late for people to join. So if you want to give us some more info.
Let me see if there's any other pieces to be shared here. I'm just really appreciative of this opportunity. I felt really deep engagement from the audience here. So just thank you for this opportunity. I'll re-emphasize that we are in an evolutionary window. The threshold of any growth edge is always going to be difficult because it's going to take us to where we don't yet know how strong we are. So I just want to offer that prayer, that orientation, that we trust the process. And even meet where like it feels sticky or disempowering or entrapped and we don't know the way out, meet that with, okay, that's the very place where to the caterpillar, that's entrapment and disempowerment. But to the butterfly, this is where I fly and I roam and I have fun. So there's a threshold, there's a change that's happening right now on our own evolutionary journey. Trust it. The deepest, the best thing we can ever give to ourselves is the inner feeling, the inner experience of trusting where we are right now. So that's what I would want and wish for everyone, that we can really just trust the intelligence of the unfolding right now and really earnestly seek to know ourselves and do our work. I have a book. It's an astrology book. It's Evolutionary Astrology, A Beginner's Guide. So now that we're on that, I have a YouTube channel, Heart and Soul Centered Astrology, where I speak to the transits from a heart and soul perspective. I have lots of products out there, and I have a training program that actually hasn't begun yet. We begin in a week. So this is actually a perfect time for those that are drawn. I have a live program that begins next week. It's an opportunity to study astrology, interpreting the chart from a soul perspective, which means learning how to read every part of the chart through the lens of thinking of this life as a school of self-realization. So what are the core dynamics of the soul that we brought into this lifetime? And what's the evolutionary intention? It's a very precise and very penetrating and beautiful interpretive paradigm. So you can check that out on my website. We begin, it's 2 parts. So part 1 is just the essentials. You can just take that, or you can take the full year program. Half of my students are either completely new to astrology or completely new to this form of astrology. But we all start with a beginner's mind, and that's a very important part of the work. For those that don't want to take the live program, which includes video curriculum, workbook, transcription, and live weekly classes and additional mentorship opportunities, we have a self-study program that just includes the video curriculum and the workbook and the transcription. So please feel free to reach out. I also have discounts available for those that want to take the live program, are sincerely called towards it, but cannot afford the full price. Many of you are living, for example, in other countries where it's just like the economic reality is so different than here in the US. So I always want to be available for that. Or if you're an elderly on a fixed budget, or whatever life experience, if you're sincerely drawn to study this and do this work with me, reach out, and I work out a price that works with each individual on a case-by-case basis.
Wow, that's amazing. I know I have chills as you talk about that. So I know there are people watching this video that would love to learn evolutionary astrology, and maybe they felt like it was out of reach, or they didn't know somebody that taught this form of astrology in the way that you do. And so I believe in divine timing. And I love that you're here today talking to everybody, because your class is about to start. And so should they go to your website to get all of your information and to contact you?
Yeah, check out the website. You can also email me directly, but just check out the landing page so you can see the course, get a feel of it, see what the price is. And if you need to email me, my email is also on my website. And I want to say this work is rooted in the lineage of evolutionary astrology. That's the paradigm. It's taught by Jeffrey Wolf Green. That's who I received this work from. That's the core of these teachings.
Beautiful, beautiful. And so it's arimoshe.com, correct?
ARIMOSHE, Ari Moshe, ARIMOSHE.com.
Okay, perfect. Yep, we've got it up on the screen too. So if anybody's just been listening along, I do have it there on the screen. So perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ari. Good luck with your class. I'm sure your students are going to love working with you. And I'm glad we got to do this after a few years.
This is great. Thank you so much, Dallisa. It's a beautiful space. I enjoyed it very much.
And I hope our paths cross again. So we'll say goodbye to Ari for now. And hopefully everybody will go check out your website. And thanks for sharing your gifts and talents with us today. I appreciate it, Ari.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Oh my goodness gracious. Like I said earlier, I feel like this is going to be one of those episodes that you may want to listen back to again. And if you thought of a friend or a family member that would resonate or could potentially be helped in some way by this episode, please share it with them. I would really, really appreciate it. We've got a couple things that we've got to go over before we say goodbye today. I'll be pulling the jar winner here in just a couple of minutes. I do want to pull a tarot card and just see what the energy is for the week ahead. So let me shuffle these. I'm going to mention a couple of quick things also. Tomorrow, my Sacred Signal members don't even know this. Tomorrow, I'm going to be walking my Sacred Signal members through a guided experience. We are going to go into the Giza pyramids and access the energy that is underneath the pyramids. So whether you can make the live broadcast or the replay, you get both. So if you're not yet in the Sacred Signals community, you can go and do that over on my website, spiritandspark.com. Click on Sacred Signals. So that's what we have going on tomorrow. And then, so I'm going to do a fun thing Thursday morning. It's going to be a 36-hour special offer. And if you're not on my email list, this is the perfect time to go add yourself. Go to spiritandspark.com. If you scroll all the way to the bottom of the homepage, you'll see where it says receive Dallisa's news and invitations. So just put your email address in there and I'll add you to all of my alerts. But that's going to be 36 hours only starting Thursday morning. So make sure you get on that. It's going to be fun. Let's see here. Okay. Tarot card and then our jar winner. And thank you to all of my Sacred Signal members that are here today. I love you. I love that you've been having great conversations over on our Discord and talking about predictions and everything. So I love all of my Sacred Signal members, and I appreciate each and every one of you that have been a part of this episode today. Those of you that showed up and commented and were a part of that conversation. So thank you to everybody. But yeah, any of my information's over at spiritandspark.com. I'm just shuffling my cards off to the side here. And let me cut my deck. What is our energy for the week ahead? Ooh, interesting. We have the Four of Swords, my friends, Four of Swords. So whenever I see this card, I think of rest. This card can also bring about energies having to do with depression. And I know that came up in today's episode. So my warning with this card is if you or anyone you know, if you are dealing with any kind of emotional crisis or you're feeling like your mental health has taken a turn either for you or someone in your life, please get help. Please take it very, very seriously. This card is like a pause. You can see this figure here is lying inside of a church, the stained glass window up here. You see the sword down here at the bottom. So the card can signal that once there has been this rest, this renewal, that going within Ari and I talked so much about today, that then you can pick up the sword again and go back out. But so if you're feeling like, I need to stay at home more this week, or if I feel like I just need to recharge my own battery, maybe I shouldn't go to the thing that I was invited to on Saturday. Maybe I would just love to sit at home and sit with myself. It's okay. You can do that. So do what feels right to you. So the Four of Swords is our card for this week. Now let's go ahead and pick our jar winner. So you know the drill if you've been watching this. I'm going to pop my email address here in the live chat. So I'm going to pull a winner. You have until midnight tonight, March 25th, to email me if you are the person that's name is called. And if I've got your email by midnight, I will pull cards for you and do a 12-month personalized tarot report for fun. Yeah. I think it's fun. Okay, so The name I pull is going to exactly match the name you have as your screen name in the chat. So keep that in mind. Okay, drum roll. That's my drum roll. Here we go. Jenny Nestor. Jenny Nestor, you are today's big winner. Send me an email, dallisa@spiritandspark.com. Jenny Nestor, you are our big winner today. And thank you to everybody again for tuning in to this week's Planets and Predictions episode. Thank you to my special guest, Ari. Please make sure you go check out his website. And again, check out that astrology class that launches next week. And don't hesitate to reach out to him if you have any questions or you want to discuss pricing. And again, to see my work and everything I've got going on, go to spiritandspark.com. All right, we will see you back here again next week, Tuesdays, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, for another episode of Planets and Predictions. Until then, be well out there, take good care of yourself, and we will get through this. We will get through this. All right, bye for now.